What's up, Calvin? What have you been doing? How's your week going?
Huh.
It's
Right.
Friday!
That's right.
Woo!
Man, not too much different than last time, I guess. Oh, I've just been reading a lot actually. In addition to my normal stuff, I've been reading. I don't have it on me. It's called Advanced Game Design, and there are
Oh.
two books. There are two books called Advanced Game Design, which I think it's both annoying, but I guess it makes sense when you have that generic name. But I really like it. This is the less popular of the two, at least in terms of Reddit recommendations.
Yeah.
But I like it. It talks about games as systems and is spending like a lot of time on general systems and how basically you put two things that make no sense together and it creates something new is like the whole argument, and has been just diving into that.
Oh, I don't know this book at all, actually. Can you link? Do you have it on Amazon? Do you have it up there? Can you grab it?
Yeah, well, let me bring it up. Let me get
As a systems designer, I love any book that can talk to me about systems. Oh, yes! Yes.
Wow, you got that, man. That was like those games where you just get flashed an image. I'll send it anyways, just in case.
I've seen that one. I know that one. I have it. I don't know about you, but I have a wish list on my Amazon that's just full of books that I'm just like, yeah, I'll read that eventually. I'll do that eventually. Yeah,
totally get it.
No, I love that. That's a great book. Is it like exercises and stuff inside, or is it just all like a straight read through?
No, this one's more a straight read through.
Okay, I do
definitely. Yeah, definitely been learning to think about it from a lot of different angles, though, because it talks about the theory and like kind of slowly rolls it up. I haven't had like a immediate takeaway yet, but I can definitely tell because I'm looking at games differently as a result.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. Yeah, there's tons of books like that. Like right here, like I've always got the Art of Game Design just sitting beside me. You can't see it at all.
Yeah, mine was like that too. Art of Game Design. I don't think
Art
I've.
of Game Design.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
Oh, you got to put the book up close to you. Is that how it works?
Yeah, I was like, the only thing is, my face is the only thing that's not obscured.
Yeah. Okay, I get it now.
It looks hella janky on my computer right now, so it's so funny. But
yeah.
No, I love that. I keep going and let me know if there's any kind of takeaways that you like out of those things, because when I got out of college studying computer science, I never really wanted to be a programmer. Like, I always just wanted to know how to program.
Yeah.
So I was always studying game design on the side, and that's then how I then ended up doing all of this stuff. But out of college, I realized, like, oh my god, I know nothing. Like, I know next to nothing. Like, I need to do my own. So I started buying the textbooks from new game design courses and just reading through them and doing the exercises myself while, like, doing the full-time job. And oh my god, did that help out so much over the years. But there's a couple of cool books that I'm reading right now on that same vein. This one here.
Oh.
So this is called...
That's definitely an interesting topic. Super interesting topic.
Yeah, but the reason why I like this book, The Psychology of Play by Suzanne Miller, is because the publishing date is in 1968. So this is written from a time where play and exploration around play was not formalized around video games or computers. So it's a little bit more raw in the science of why do we do these things and why do children do these things. And it's cool perspective to see why did we think that kids played and did all of this stuff, earlier on. And the whole first chapter is the anthology of play as the people who were studying it knew it. And it's wicked interesting, where it's like they were doing studies with animals, I think specifically tiger cubs or something like that, that they were using in the analogy, and then looking at how they would play and how the energy usage, right? Like they're apex predator, they get food, and that food needs to be used to get more food. And they were like, how does play fit into the cycle, right? Like it's not real. I'm wasting energy to try and go and get something in an animal that usually is like lazing around until they have to go out and go get that thing. But comparing that to the kids, it was like energy, like they thought of it as like everybody had like a bar of energy. Like this is like kind of how they
Yeah.
had it in the book. And that these kids would just, they'd have that bar and their bar would just recharge faster. So they just had to get that energy out, and that was the only reason why we
Nice.
played and the only reason why we did anything. And
Yeah.
obviously that is completely like flipped on its head now, and play is practice, and play is the ability to find new lines or find something new within the one thing that you're doing, right? Play with what you're doing. Don't just try to do the
Yeah.
same thing or do the process. Like try and find some. It's not necessarily even finding fun. Play is not necessarily. I'd have to tell people, like my friends who don't do games or anything like that. Like I've had to explain my thoughts on this, like when we're playing like tennis or something, right? That play is like a byproduct, or play is like the formation. Like that's what we're doing. We are playing, right? Like, but we're then that's our boundary. That's our rule set. Like you and I are on the same rule set, and we are playing. We're in a
Yeah.
state
Yeah.
of play, and fun is actually a byproduct of the actions that we do within that. We're not having
Yeah. Yeah.
fun. Like you don't play to have fun. You play, and fun is created while you play. And it was interesting to get their ideas on this because they never thought of it as like fun is something that they just have, right? Fun is something that you do. It's not something that comes from something. And I think that'll, I don't know, maybe a lot of people need to get that formalization like backward, or maybe they get it a little backwards, I think, anyway. Like,
But do people play because they know they're gonna have fun? As a result,
they
usually.
do, yeah, because they know that
Okay. Okay.
fun, what I mean, the hope is that fun is a byproduct and they get
Yeah.
entertainment
Yeah.
out
Okay.
of fun.
Yeah.
But it's still a byproduct, right? Like, and then, I mean, we're having fun, but in, the brain process then is like, well, dopamine, this is cool, I enjoy fun, right? And they link the two together. But I still believe that like having fun is not something you do. It's a byproduct of what you do, more so than
Yeah.
anything else.
No, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense.
But it was cool because I only think I fucking got through that after like reading a couple of these books. But have you ever had a
Yeah.
book that you've like read the first chapter like 20 times and then you put it down? Uh,
Oh, yeah. So actually, yeah, I'll tell my background on just academic stuff in general is I'm very terrible in terms of academic stuff. Not only do I have or I used to generally have trouble just like reading textbooks, but I never valued it. Like I was just always like, oh, especially game design. With game design, I'm like, whatever, just make some games and like observe and figure out your own stuff. But in the recent years, I've had a couple revelations. First off, the first main part is that the more understanding you have, the more you're going to get out of academic research. Because I do see a lot of reviews, like looking at this book and some other well-known books that say this is just trash. It's just telling me stuff that I already know, and it is saying
was that
certain.
was that a Raph Costner book as well?
That actually, yes, you're right. That is one of them. That is one of them. And like some of the other psychology books, like Thinking Fast and Slow and stuff, you'll get half praise and then half like, hey, this is kind of obvious. This is what they say. But so like lesson number one that I learned is that books are there for you to kind of really have a conversation with. So I write in my books all the
Wow.
time, like directly on it, and you're not supposed to take a passive approach when you're just reading a book. You're supposed to like read each line and like think critically about it, which is like, is this true? Why is it true? And what are the ramifications of it? So now, like when I'm reading this book, man, I read so slow. I read so slow. I swear it takes me like half an hour to do like 2 pages. But which really sucks. But I am like genuinely writing a lot and questioning, and trying to absorb everything about it. And I guess when you do that, when you're comparing your mental model to the book, I think it can be a really intricate conversation, even if it seems basic at a shallow level. But lesson number 2 that I learned. So again, as not much of a reader, I didn't. I always just assumed if a book was old, it's obsolete,
Yeah.
because that book is very old. But that's not really the case. It's the same principle of games. When you look at games and there's like, what's a good example? Oh, here's a good example. So Soul Calibur, there's 6 Soul Caliburs now,
Okay.
and a normal casual player would think, well, Soul Calibur 6 is the best one, right? But apparently, most people herald Soul Calibur 2 as still the best one. So just because something is newer doesn't mean it's necessarily better. Um, and a lot of these groundbreaking books that were written like maybe even decades ago still have a lot of merit to read on. So
Yeah,
that's
it's like
been my
it's weird, right? The fundamentals still kind of hold up, you
yeah.
know. But it's I always feel like games is a compounding factor, right? So games compound on
Yeah,
other games, so it's like there's always a lineage of like, that's why the grandpa coming out and being like, back in my day, I played
exactly.
this game, right?
Exactly.
Like that, me specifically. It's like, yeah, because those were the core essence of now what is 50 other games. You know what I mean? And then you look at those games and you're like, oh yeah, that's just that. Like
Exactly.
that's where they got that from. Like that's,
Exactly.
and the worst part is though is that like I can take that and disregard a game completely. I'll just look at it for like 30 seconds and be like, yeah, you took it from this game, this game, this game. That's your art style. Cool. Your mechanics will all be this. Yeah, you might have some cool content. Maybe you have some cool moments within it. Like it's probably an okay game, but like I know your game. Cool. I already played it.
I
Like
feel the
it's
same
been
way.
here before. I mean, second episode or something you were talking about. Like you're playing games for patterns, right? Like I need new puzzles. I need
Yeah.
new things because I've seen enough, and I don't need to do any more of like those bigger things. But I feel you. Like I love secondhand books. You're never gonna see this, but like people write in the margins,
Yeah.
and especially books like this, like textbooks, where you can, I always write my name in the front and put my phone number or like my
Nice.
email or something, just so that whenever if I'm gonna get rid of the book again and give it to somebody else, like they'll have my margins. And then all of a sudden you have this almost like weird pen pal thing. It's like if somebody buys your book and then starts reading through your margins and they're like, hey, you got good ideas, and then they can email you and be like, hey, you want to discuss this? I have your book, and you're like, oh, cool. Well, like,
Yeah, that's cool.
never had that happen to me before, but that's
Yeah.
that's the hope and the idea, right? I would actually have to get rid of the books for that to actually even
Yeah,
manifest itself.
exactly.
My library shelf is a mess right now. It is just crap everywhere. But
Yeah.
I, for years, have been doing this type of stuff too, where I'll find the papers,
Yeah.
and if I like a paper, I'll download it. I always try to have a printed copy, and I'll stick that into the thing too. Like this one,
I like that.
understanding and evaluating cooperative games just was pretty cool, and then the MDA framework, right?
Yeah.
A formal approach to game design and game research. And
Do you think the
God, I should
MDA
remember. Oh, God.
Do you think that framework is still applicable, or is it kind of obsolete? It's kind of like one of the first ones I've heard of.
Mechanics, dynamics,
Yeah.
aesthetics. I think at a fundamental level, it still holds up.
Yeah.
The idea that you always need to look at the game from both the designer and the player, or from, this comes back to this principle thing. Like I can show you through all of my GDDs, right? Every feature spec that I've ever done for like the last 7 years or whatever. At the very top, I have a big overview, and that overview is just like, this is what the feature is. This is how it's going to sit within the game. This is like this is why we're doing it, and very high level of like the big one line sentence that just says like this is what this is. Underneath that, it is product goals, and then it's user goals. And I or vice versa, flip the two, right? But always, whenever you're going to design something for a video game, you need to know from the product level, how is this going to affect the product? Is this going to link into other things? Do I need this to be extensible? How do I want to interact with this system? How do I want the player to interact with this system? And then the user goal side is, I'm playing this. So how do I want to feel while I'm playing it? How do I want to interact with this? How does this fit within my daily play? And use these things as, these are your, the games to me is all about building that perspective lens, right? Like, yeah. I need to know what the player's perspective is on any feature, on any art, on any new thing that's going to come into this game, and I need to go and say that they're either going to like this or they're not, or how are they going to adapt to this? How are they going to, how is this going to fit into their lives now? And the only way you do that is by knowing your players and building it from that side too. But you can't always, so you do have to try to meet in the middle. I think that people push this. I've had people push the MDA like really hard and be like, no, you have to do incremental development, and it has to be the whole way, and it has to be like you're building parts, and then you stop, and then you actually build the user-facing parts, and you got to do that, and then you stop that, and you got to do this. And as I'm like, that's the incremental dance there doesn't work. Like, but just setting out some guidelines. Like, I think a lot of the things is evaluating design, and how do we evaluate design? And the way that I do it is by using those sentences. As a user, I want to feel like this, like a badass when I do X, Y, and Z. And that's like a terrible, terrible statement. But give yourself something concrete that you can go and say, okay, when I've finished this design or I have it on paper, can I hold it up to these sentences and say, will the player feel like a badass here? Like, will they feel good about this? Does that actually, like, hey, I want this feature to deal with long-term retention. It's like, does anything in this spec handle long-term retention? If that's a goal of this thing, no, measurement of success is so important. And it's something in like the UX side, people, have been harping for forever, but it happens across the game development board. It is, how do I know that my feature on paper is what I want it to be? I need to have some criteria that says, if you've kind of ticked these boxes, you've done at least your due diligence. Like, you're at least making something that should be successful and positioning yourself for success. But if you don't have those things, it's like, I mean, are you just firing in the dark? I mean, how do you know that you're even making something that's gonna click into your game or anything else? I don't know. They're just so important for me.
It's not just good for you to have these requirements, but it's definitely really good for the team because they can kind of look at it and then unite and just kind of align their work always against your requirements so that the vision's more coherent rather than kind of following your general asks of what they should do, and then at the end you're just like evaluating it by yourself as the main designer or something. So yeah, I think it's definitely a very good approach, and your bigger organization, the more communication you need, and that's very important communication.
Have any companies you've ever dealt with ever put any onus on these things? You know what I mean? Like how formal of a process is too formal in your mind, right? Because I'm handling this now at been working for, with these other things, contracting on the side and dealing with independent companies and going through their side of things, and then going through the major AAAs and working along their process lines, and I'm like, they have zero process. And the other company has all the process. Like, pipeline, flow, review, everything, right? But the other company is like, we don't even make tasks. we just say, 2 weeks out, we got a play test. let's stub some stuff down in like a Google Doc and say, cool, let's just do that.
Yeah.
Great, cool, awesome, let's just go do it. And that's so weird for me.
Yeah.
So strange.
Yeah. Well, so agile in general, or basically making being less rigid in general. Yeah, that certainly works better when you're exploring. But if you're working, because yeah, to answer your question, I worked in enterprise software, and the product was not going to change that much. So you could really get your requirements pretty fine tuned. And when you can do that, it is pretty effective because everyone knows pretty much what they need to do, and there's no excess weight.
Mm-hmm.
The advantage of a more agile approach is to allow for freedom and flexibility. When you're like, you know what, this gun doesn't really work. Let's change it to punches and kicks. But the problem is you need to build extra weight to allow that flexibility to happen. So yeah, I'm really curious if you've seen advantages in either approach, or is it really just dependent on the product and how set in stone it is?
Yeah, it's weird. You see on the indie side, right? Because budgets are a constraint, knowing
Hmm.
what your design is up front cuts fat. You don't have time to pivot,
Yeah.
right? You can't just put something in the game and hope that it works. It's like, no, I kind of need to know that this is going to be the thing I want. So formalizing that process up front is actually really important for your budget. You kind of need more overarching review than anything else. Whereas the AAA side, it's like, hey, we got a team of 30 and we got to get these people fed. Like you know what I mean? They're all getting paid and we need to get them working. Whereas in the indie side, like I'm all about, nope, hold on, we're gonna wait another week. Sorry, yes, you're not, you know what I mean? Tasks are not going to be there for you. We need to like nail this down. Once we nail it down, you'll have your tasks. You can go. But if as soon as somebody else starts working on something, or you try to find something, you know what I mean? Like there's phases of development, right? Like you at least know that like I want my P1s. So it's like okay, engineering can go off and figure out build P1s, but talk to them about this is where I'm taking this system, like P2s, P3s. So don't don't bottle me into a corner on any of these fronts. But you know what I mean? That's very waterfall, right? I need to know
Yeah.
everything up front, and then I need to design it all and put it on paper, and then I need to talk an engineer through it, and then they need a task breakdown, and then they put it in a Jira, and then we stick it in a sprint, and then we do the work over 2 weeks, and then we see what the results are, right? We do a formal review process, and then we have playtests on Fridays, and it's like, cool, but that's all ancillary fat now, right? Like you've put a lot of onus on getting it right up front, not finding the fun as you go, which is I think a bigger
Yeah.
thing that if you're afforded the development budget to find the fun, that those are some of the best times, but they're also just some of the messiest times because you don't need a formal process. You're like, what do you think is going to be good? Put it in the game. Cool. Is it good? Bad? Great. Take it out. Try it again. Right?
Yeah. Finding the fun is it's expensive and it's risky for the most part, and that is in fact why you will very rarely find at least the mobile games with money to buy ads like the big ones. You'll almost never find a mobile game with very innovative gameplay. They're like, hey, this game's at the top of the charts. Let's take this core gameplay, and don't bother risking rolling the dice.
no, but same in the M&A stuff though. Like you'll see it like they'll take the big piece from some other game and they'll take the other big piece and maybe it's like Coin Master, right? Coin Master makes 100 and something million a month.
Yeah.
So some people look at that and they're like, it's just a friggin' slot machine. What is this? We could build this in 6 months. What the? How are they doing this? Right? And they don't see all the other stuff that goes on in here, but
Right.
they'll take that idea and they'll hyper fill in on that, and they'll see revenue number and oh my god, look at this mechanic. People love this. They press and hold a button and the game plays itself. What the fuck? So they'll take that concept, but they may not figure out like why does that work. They'll just be like, no, that's the face and that's what people do, so we're gonna do that, right? Let's do let's do a pull. You press and hold the button, and some wheels go, and you get coins, right? And then that's as far as it goes. And then finding the fun is like, okay, what's our version of that? So it's like, oh, it's not a slot machine because we don't want it to be a slot machine, but maybe it's you're playing cards, and it's every I get deals, and every time I instead of it's pulling the handle every single time, and that's one energy. It's like one card is one thing, and every card that I get, if I get an ace, then I get blah, and then if it's actually if I get a 2 and then I get a 4, well then I get an extra bonus because I got an increased number, like I got like a higher number on top, and then it goes all the way up, and then I get to an ace, and then I go aces also aces are 1, so it's like cool, I got an ace in that thing, and then blah blah blah. Now it's still a 1, so everything over that I get more money. Like that's where then you start finding the fun within your own metric. But at the end of the day, on the face, it's still the same thing. It's supposed to fill the same role within that core loop. And that's kind of like the bothersome thing, is that I think that mobile games these days are just treadmills, right? It's the same thing over and over with a little bit of a different paint job. And it's all about progression, right? Long-term, long-tail progression. Keep the player in the game, keep the player in the product. Make sure that they're having some amount of fun every day, and try to get them into that habitual repeat pattern of always coming back. Just like I find myself all of a sudden opening Clash Royale for no reason, and then being like, why am I doing this? Why did I swipe 5 pages on my phone to get over to here? I don't even want to play the game right now.
It's not even just mobile games. Core games, over, I'd say even just the past 5 years, they've evolved where nearly every game has an RPG system. God of War used to be just a classic action game, and you know what? Let's throw in the skill trees and whatever in there. It's just, you do have this evolution of adding progression systems, so it's kind of the meta now to do that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like I always feel like that's like we want the player to have chase goals, and in those that like God of War, right? Let's just talk about it. Never played the game, never played any of them. Sadly,
I actually haven't either.
Any of them ever. My parents would not buy me that game when I was a kid and the PS2 was out, so I wasn't playing that. But I'm trying to get a PlayStation 5 specifically so I can kind of play these things.
Nice.
I do want one. I really do want one. But we'll see. I'm going back to the console gaming. But we want the player to have chase goals. We want the player's gameplay to feel like it evolves over time. When you have this combat balance that's like, I'm going to be doing the same thing over and over again, right? Like, what are my loops? So battle combat is a big loop. And in the older games, I was always just smashing, right? Like, you would just have... Like, did they have any? I don't even know if they had any, like, evolve of your core button mash, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I'm kind of guessing it was kind of like the old school where it's like, hey, now you unlocked this weapon or attack because you beat this boss.
Yeah.
But yes, I am guessing.
Which is a different side of it too, right? That's like
Yeah,
the
it is.
earlier side of this.
Exactly.
Like Prince of Persia, big on this, right? You have the time dagger, and over time, then you kind of got more equipment. Your sword upgraded because you defeated Blah. The Amazing Spider-Man on PS2. You would collect the comic books. You would get new move sets, new skins, and they would give you some new stuff then too. But it's very light, But it was always like, how is the gameplay going to evolve, especially within this core loop? It's Assassin's Creed as well. Very first one. Start Enzo with all of your equipment, and then take all of that away, and then throughout the game, the player has to build up that again, and all the equipment gives you a new movement set and a new way to tackle the puzzle that's going to be in front of you. So challenge is a big thing, and evolving challenge over time is massive. Now, how much choice do we need to give the player in terms of mechanics to handle and stuff like that? Like, that's a big thing. Because I don't know how much flavor there is in God of War. It's like, do I just is it still linear progress in terms of I do this and I get enough points and then I get that upgrade, and then I do this and I get enough points and I get that upgrade? is it, what do you think is a bigger driver of progression there? Do you think a point system whereby you get currency to spend on things to figure out your movement set is better than just I killed this boss and therefore I got the bigger sword
That's
and
a
I
great,
unlock something
yeah.
else?
That's a good question. Actually, let me offer a third axis first.
Yeah, do it.
This is the knowledge-based progression, and this is Celeste is often cited for this. So
Really?
in Celeste, you have access to all your moves right off the bat.
Yeah.
So a pro player can hop in and be like, "Oh yeah, I'm just gonna speed run this." But a normal player, they don't realize a lot of the tricks are in the game, and by playing it, they either organically find it and get better and better, or there may be signposts that teach you specific stuff. I actually didn't get that far, but that's something people cite, which is like, oh, and one I have played is The Witness.
Mm-hmm.
In The Witness, you have no idea what anything does, but over time, you learn different rules of how the puzzles work, and you start to see puzzles and the whole island in a different light. So it's all is knowledge based
Yeah.
progression.
Try
So
going friggin' back to fucking The Witness after you've been away for it
oh
for a
my
couple
god,
of days. Try going back. Yeah.
yeah,
I got 30% through the game,
yeah.
and then I came back and I was like, I don't remember what the hell I'm supposed to do here. And
You know,
I'm not going back to the start of this fucking puzzle to figure it out again. And God knows I will never watch a video to ruin my experience of the Witness, so I'm just not going to play it.
you
It's
know
just going to sit there unfinished.
that acted as a retention mechanic for me because I stepped away from The Witness for a while, and I knew that if I stayed away for too long, I was not going to be able to beat this game without serious work. So yeah, and I kept going back at it. So interesting retention mechanic there.
No, I like it, but that is cool. So retaining through knowledge or progression through knowledge is like
Yeah,
almost like unlocking something with your own mind.
yeah, yeah,
Celeste is a great example of that. I never think of it as, but the there's a point in the game where it really rings true, where you get into a section of the gameplay where you're actually given the end puzzle to progress to the next level right in front of you. But if you don't know how to actually manipulate the mechanic, you won't be able to do it. So some people will just bash their heads against the wall against this one thing, and they know if I do this, I get to the next side. But they have 4 chambers within that area, and all of those chambers teach you the mechanics that you need. So you go into a chamber and you learn something new about how this thing outside of those rooms works. And you're like, oh, I can do that? Oh, okay, cool. And then you might come out and you might try it, and then you might find another dead end where you're like, fuck, but how do I get over that thing now? So then you're like, well, bash my head, bash my head, bash my head. I was like, fuck. So then you go to another chamber, learn something else new, come back out, and you're like, oh. And because you may not need all 4 to actually learn everything you need, you might figure out all of the pieces by doing the 2 or the 3 or whatever. But the fact of the matter is that it is right there in front of you, and you just have to actually like learn it. Like you it's a great example of it in like in game of like puzzle solution. Like I have given you the puzzle, but you don't have any of the tools in your toolbox, in
totally.
your knowledge toolbox to be able to even handle this situation. And if I can't expect you to handle it, and I just gave you that, that's like where onboarding of complexity comes in, right? I'm now onboarding these mechanics to you, but I'm allowing you as a design. Usually we'll do that first, but in this case, it's like flipped. It's like here's the thing, and here's the places if you want to go learn. And I kind of loved it, but I was also hardcore tripping on acid for 8 hours on my birthday, and that's all I did was play Celeste for 8 hours.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I sat down at my desk and cried. I was just playing this game, and I was like, I'm in the designer's head. I gotta see what you did. I get it. Oh my god.
Nice.
Like, I'm just there, like, raging through these puzzles, just being like, this is so great, and I get it. Like, I love what you're doing. like I'm having a full blown conversation as if the game designer was sitting beside me, and I'm just
Right, right.
geeking out over the thing the whole time. But yeah, I got 80% of the way done in a day, which was sweet. But
So in that chamber of four rooms, for example, how do they teach you new knowledge? Is it just through the puzzle, or is there any text?
no text,
Okay,
no
I see.
text. Yeah, or whatever. I think that it's kind of pattern recognition and onboarding of
Okay,
of the
because I
positions.
thought some of the tricks were like really tricky, like dash and then high jump motions or something. Like, how does the game teach you that?
Um, you kind of get that through death over time,
Okay.
in my opinion. You, it's the same thing in like Mario Odyssey when you're or Mario 64 or something, right? Or boxing. There's a place where combos come in, where you know how far you can take it, right?
Uh,
And over time, then you're like, okay, well, I know I can jump, and then I know I can dash. So then the early levels are like kind of reliant on single dashes, and then over time, then you have to be like, oh no, actually now I need to take that jump, single dash, and then slide on a wall. And now it's like, okay, cool, now that's part of the toolbox. And then it's like maybe next level, I gotta go and jump, dash, slide on a wall, fall, double jump, and like now I need to know, okay, actually I need to save this and maybe plan my route out a little bit better. And as you get the deeper puzzle, you build a better idea of what your combos can be like, right? Super Mario Odyssey, it's like, oh, I can jump, and then I can throw my hat, and then I can do like another jump, and then I can body slam and then roll, and it's like then maybe jump out of that and then throw the hat again. It's like you need to know how you can link the pieces together in meaningful ways to be able to do those things effectively.
gotcha.
And funnily enough, I think that like Zelda Breath of the Wild, now that I'm playing it, visualizes this really well with the energy meter. We're way off
Oh,
topic of the
I still remember the question. Don't worry, I'll bring it back eventually.
but so one of the first things that you get out of Breath of the Wild at the very starts, before you even get that intro cinematic, that you walk out and then all of a sudden, "Bah, bah, 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 it's a beautiful world. And look at the mountain in the background. You can go there. It's not real. It's a LOD, but whatever." Um, funnily enough, is actually a wall to climb up, a very small wall, but enough that they teach you like, hey, this is climbing, blah blah blah. I stayed at that wall for probably 7 minutes,
Yeah.
just climbing to the top, jumping down, jumping onto the wall, doing another jump to get to the top, seeing how much energy I was using, seeing if I jumped onto the wall and then climbed, how much energy was I using just doing that? How much energy was I just using just climbing from the bottom to the top? How much energy am I using if I climb and then jump? If I climb a little bit and I'm in my climbing animation at the bottom of the rock and I jump and I get that really high move, do I somehow use like less? And then I kind of came to this, I came into, I kind of hit into that, like, if I jumped onto the wall, climbed for one frame, and then jumped again, I actually got a free jump. And I was like,
Oh,
whoa, okay. I used
so
a
are you a mini
I used
speedrunner?
a
What is going on here?
sliver. Yeah, I used like a sliver of my energy. But I couldn't believe it. Like, I just sat there and just was like, okay, like, energy's a core. I need to know how all of my moves seem to spend it. How do I spend my resources effectively? And I just sat there and just kind of like played with the system and just was like poked and prodded at it and said, what's the best combo? What's the most efficient combo here? Like, how do I know? Because I want to climb the highest shit. And
Yeah.
if I can't get to the top and I'm being less efficient, like I might, if this is my max plane, I might be being inefficient with my moveset and always getting to here and then thinking that that's my max. And that's just like a bad player position, right? Like, if you can't recognize that I am being inefficient here, then what do you do? Like, you may break puzzles because you don't know how to climb to the top. And I've built you as a level designer. We love to build puzzles that are like right at the height, right at the edge of a player's energy math, you know, like especially if we have energy,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Or
yeah,
like
yeah.
it's Celeste, and it's I want you to do one move sequence that is uses everything in your toolbox. I want you to jump, dash, get the cherry. I want you to then glide on this wall. I want you to then hit a button that then does this other thing. The platforms over here, like you know, in Celeste they had the platforms that like shot you out.
Right.
That was cool too. But trying then they're like, I want you to do that to the level of your toolbox, and I think it's really is just like complexity, onboarding, how much time that your player is going to play with your mechanics, how can you telegraph to them that like there's more here, can you add these things together, and then can you
Yeah.
give incremental challenge to push them to link them together. Because in the Celeste example, it's I gave you everything. I gave you all of the tools from the beginning. I gave you the puzzle. You just had to figure it out, but you couldn't figure it out, and you would have stopped right here because you didn't go through you didn't go through the pain, right? So you have to go through a little bit of that to, I think, get that mastery level to go there. And in the same vein, like that's all progression, that's all knowledge progression as well then.
Yeah, the first off, the fact that you could even spend 7 minutes on a wall suggests that the devs put
I'm a
a decent
psychopath.
amount of time into it. So that's pretty cool. But when you played Celeste for the first time, did you run around and like try to figure out all the combinations of your controls, or was it just something about that wall that like spoke to you and compelled you to experiment with it?
Yes, as soon as I gotten out of the main chamber, I think you get like an enemy at the very like it's kind of. Do you know what's so funny? Like we're talking about lineages of games, right? Have you ever played Medieval,
Oh, the PS1
the
game?
PS1 game?
I've played it at a friend's house way back. I have no memory
Dude,
of it.
I played the demo
Yeah, yeah. I think it was a
religiously.
demo. Yeah.
I played the main game. I loved it. What a cool game. That game starts the exact same as Breath of the Wild. And I can't
Man.
think of how far back the game goes to the same thing. I am
Right.
a medieval knight who is a skeleton who has gotten resurrected by an ancient force to go defeat evil around the thing. I wake up in a crypt, and I am talked to by a golem NPC that's a stone statue.
Are you given a smartphone though in
You're given a
medieval?
sword, and I think
Okay.
I think also for whatever reason in the early 2000s, late 90s, we loved Spyro. So and Zelda had my little hey listen. Spyro had my little hey
Mm,
listen. I think this one had a little creature fairy,
okay.
fae that like went around with you too. But I was like this is the same style, same thing, just different era, different time, different story, but same everything. Uh, but I think the biggest thing for me is like I stayed there for 7 minutes because I'm a psychopath trying to optimize. Right, I'm in this new world. This is something going back to books. It's actually something I read and learned in Game Feel. One of my favorite books that there is for game design, and the big moniker was actually them talking about Link as well. But it's all about who the player is and player representation within the game. I come into this new world. I know nothing about this world, and the only way that I can interact with it, my point of interaction with that world, is my character. So whenever my character goes and walks into a wall, I feel it. Whenever my character gets hit, I feel it. Because I feel it in my own frustration because I know that I don't want to get hit, and I know I'm being clumsy by hitting into that wall. But we also have no concept of what the world is, and hitting into these things and playing with our own mechanics teaches us how do we influence the world around us, and how can we manipulate the world by itself. So same very human-esque things, right? How do I go from point A to point B, but I may not know even where my point B is. I'm still just learning how to walk. But your entire perception of that game, your entire interaction is through that character. So we extend our perceptive bubble to that
That's cool.
character. And because you have to, like when we talk about people, we always talk about like people have a bubble, right? We have this thing, and if somebody's in my bubble, they're in my space, and I can feel that, and I can touch this thing, and that's, I feel it, and it's there, and I can interact with this thing, and I can pick it up. But the game only gives you a certain level of mechanics, but I'm still interacting with the world in the same way. And this is a real world test to this too. So again, I'll say this again, but we take that perceptive bubble and we imply it to the character so that we detect the same things that they detect, and we feel through that character then too. We imbue them with those things. That's when you're in the really good states, because when your character gets hit, you get hit, and it's a weird thing that in the brain that takes over. It's the same thing in real life, and a great test for this is when you're driving a car and you get into an accident, you might say, they hit me. You don't say, they hit my car. Now, that might be because of language and blah, 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 but it's actually a perceptive thing. When you're driving the car and you're a driver, right? You feel the boundaries of your car. You feel your tires on the road. You're listening to the engine rev. You're watching your dials, but you actually do feel the boundaries. If you're good at, if you're a fucking good goddamn driver, you probably you know where the corners are. You know where the edges are. So and if somebody's getting close to you, you're like,
yeah, exactly.
Right. But it's that idea of I am now the car. So when you're in that accident, it's you hit me or I hit you. It's not. But when you're outside the car, it's you hit my car. Now that's also again language things. I'm not in the car, but when you're in the car, I am the car, and you hit me. Not you hit my car. You hit me, and I think that's how I see how players are going to interact with the world, right? Like you need to center them into that section and know who you are, and why you're there is a different question, but really honing in on like you can't just say this is who you are. You have to actually say like no, like that's my character and that's the representation of me within that world, and I am going to use the move set of that character, and I need to know what can I do in that place. And that's how I try to drive players into player vision of like, hey, like you need to know who you are and give feedback of what's going on. But obviously
That is such an interesting topic. Yeah,
well,
I haven't really thought about it in that way.
it
And
happens in mobile games all the time where you're like, who am I? What am I doing here? Like what am I doing here is a different question, but like you might give me a challenge and I'm like, but who am I in this challenge? And I might not feel any of that, right? But that's where you go and say if it's a character battler, well no, you're not the character. You're the manager. So you are on that outside plane. So your representation into the world is you interacting directly with your characters, but you don't feel through those characters. You
yeah,
are that architect on top rather than Mario itself,
do you think management games are inherently less immersive, or do you think avatars are extremely important in that regard because it's
Yeah.
harder to feel if you're a manager or a RTS player or whatever?
If you're a manager, you don't necessarily need a representation because you are the representation. You are that person. You need to know that there's a moniker for that, right? But I think that general sports tries to fill that gap of like, we know kind of who a coach is, right? Or maybe that's a very male perspective or whatever, sports male perspective or whatever. But, we know who the coach is and we kind of know what that general representation of that person is within that world. And usually a coach is actually not so much of a name, but a style, right? Like NFL coaches, headphones, they got the sheet in front of their faces, right? They're talking bomber jackets, usually heavy and fat, shouting at people, pointing, blah, blah, blah. The face could be completely blank. It doesn't need to be anything. It could actually
Yeah.
just, but that is the idea of who that player, in the management sim, like what is their recognition of a manager, but it's more of how do you actually sit the player into that feeling of telling them, hey,
Yeah.
you're a manager. You're not one of these characters. You're managing the team. So how do you so that's your representation. You're on the outside, and let's say it's XCOM, and I think this actually fills in really nicely too. XCOM is all about directing units that are on the ground. You're not the unit. You're the manager telling everybody what to do. So if we style the screen space to make it kind of feel like you're looking at this through a computer monitor in some safe bunker somewhere else, well, the moniker almost fits, right? I'm trying to sit you into that idea of you're the manager, you're the one calling the shots, but you're not these people, by trying to abstract you away and saying, no, you are behind the computer screen. And I've sci-fi themed your computer screen to kind of look like that and to make you feel that way, that you are actually this higher level UAV character. And I don't necessarily need to tell you that, but if I can give you some indication of that thing, be it through the UI, through actions, through language or whatever, then I can give you that same feeling, and I can sit you in. I try to sit you into that character position and make you think that way. Because if I can make you think that way, then you can. That's like the opening funnel of like, oh, I'm the manager. Oh, I tell everybody what to do. Oh, okay, cool. Now I know who I am, right? And then that I think the ease then of like decision making becomes a lot more apparent. Where especially in XCOM, when your characters can die and it's like, oh, Jerry, you kind of sucked anyway, so I don't really care. I'm just going to send you off over here and you're just going to suicide yourself, and maybe you survive, maybe you don't. I'll figure that out in the morning, right? But no skin off my desk. I just got to go to the next mission, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so that's actually a great example, and you reminded me of probably even maybe even more relevant example, which is The Sims. And The Sims, by concept, has always been a dollhouse. I think
Yeah.
Will Wright was already calling it a dollhouse. So when you start the game, you might create a character that mimics you, and you might even play it like yourself. But like you said, through the game interactions and adding more people to the family, you are eventually just kind of playing with dolls, and the whole interface supports that.
Yeah, yeah, it's fun like that. The Sims is such a unique game. It's such a unique
Yeah.
place. But how does this all link back to knowledge progression is huge, and progression across the board is massive.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, we're seeing obviously progression mechanics are a little bit more entertaining than not giving the player a little bit of choice in where they can spend their resources to gain new power is a better function than just getting it from a boss, unless you have multiple non-linear bosses, right? It's not fun if I get new power by going through the linear train, right? So I go from this section of enemies to boss to next level to boss to next level to boss.
Yeah.
Yes, I will get power over time, but everybody gets the same power, and there's not a lot of divergence in gameplay. That could be fine. That's totally fine. When you're trying to do like a linear story game, or you're trying to give an experience, that's fine. But I think that a lot of these games do want some form of replayability, but also being able to play within the mechanics themselves and go a little deeper on that content. And Doom Eternal is a great example here too of decoupling power away from bosses. I think is huge, and you can do that through currencies. Not, you know, whereas you can't do that if all units drop something, and then you don't want to be like an RPG loot fest and blah 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 blah. But if I can get that currency and I can get it around the game, well, now I have almost like another reason to go and say, hey, here's this battle area. Do you want to do a challenge mode? If you do a challenge mode and you win, I'll give you some upgrade currency. And you might not be now on the main path, story path, but now you're sitting in a cycle and you're spending more time doing the same, you know, moment-to-moment gameplay you were doing before, but I'm going to get something a little bit more out of it. I can reward exploration a little bit more because now upgrades are a currency, and if I go explore, maybe I might find some of that currency. So it's not just a collectible anymore, you know. It's like I'm actually getting power for doing all of the vectors
Exactly.
of stuff, rather than just saying critical mass, go over there, hit this thing.
Yep. When you asked the question, is it better to give progression when you beat bosses versus currency? The first thought. So I had this revelation as a kid, playing Link to the Past.
Mm-hmm.
The Link to the Past is the SNES Zelda game, and in that game, the currency is basically useless. You only get upgrades through bosses, and at some point it just clicked to me. Like, I used to play the game kind of normally, kill mobs, run around, but at some point, at some maybe replay number 4 or whatever, because I played that game a lot, I realized, I was like, why am I killing these enemies? It was like an existential crisis I had as a kid. I was like, what am I doing? They don't give me anything. They're not blocking my path. And at that point it clicked, and I just started running past every single enemy
That's so
because
funny.
I did not get a reward for doing so. And I always thought about, compared to, say, Secret of Mana, which is an action RPG for SNES. Typical RPG. You kill an enemy, you get experience, and you can level up. And in that game, you're kind of forced to kill everything mostly. But I was encouraged, and here it is. I felt good killing an enemy. I was getting rewarded for my time and effort for doing it. Whereas Zelda, I didn't necessarily feel good, other than for the act of doing it. So yeah, I had that revelation, and I was like, oh, okay. I don't really like, um, just giving upgrades from bosses
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah, it's all different, right? Because like Elden Ring gives upgrades from bosses. They drop new items, but the bosses are non-linear. I can go attack any of them at any time, and I can then plot my path around the world and say, actually, I just want these items, so I'm gonna go kill this boss, then this boss, then this boss, and then kill Elden Ring or whatever, and win the game. Um, the progression system when it comes down to like the straight RPG stuff, the worries is always that you become Final Fantasy and you have to
Yeah,
sit in an area and grind out, or I gotta wait for random drops or some BS that needs to happen then to do it.
absolutely.
I'd say it's so funny that you just skipped everything.
Yeah.
I do that whenever I don't need to do anything like that. Try as desperately to skip as much shit as possible.
What an efficient player.
I have
Nice.
no reason to fight trash. I don't have any reason to do it. I'll give you a great example of this. Halo Infinite. Okay, going around the levels, you hit checkpoints as you go through, and at certain points they have these loading tunnels, and enemies won't follow you. They gave you a grappling hook in the game and dashes. So all I do is grapple the ceiling,
Wow.
jump over everybody's head, dash, land, kill anything in the tiniest area that I can, and then just literally as soon as my grappling hook is off cooldown, I am grappling.
Wow.
I'm picking up. I'm jumping through the air and grabbing the big power coils that they have. I'm throwing it at the groups of enemies in front of me to like disturb them, because I know if I get them in a stagger animation state, they can't attack me. So then I just fucking and I'm gone. I skipped thousands of enemies in that game.
Crazy.
Whole swaths of gameplay, beautiful little areas that they had crafted for me, gone. Anytime that I couldn't skip something, I was mad. I was like, I just want to go from here to here, and you've given me the tool to do it, the grappling hook.
Do you think they should have
Why?
not had that tool?
It's
What do you
so
think?
strange because they give you all of these other tools, right? You have like the deployables, like the drop shield, and you have sensor orbs, and I'm like, none of that exists to me. As a player, zero. I never even swapped my equipable once. I got the upgrades for the faster grappling hook, and I just went to town.
Yeah.
Actually, weirdly enough, this is funny. Now that I think about it, uh, Halo Infinite has upgrade currency too. I had a ton of upgrade currency, never spent it. Never spent it. Because I was like, why do I need to spend it? What do I need to do here? Again, I think I spent it later on in the game, and I spent it on the grappling hook, and I was like, okay, cool. Here's 35 currency. I've no idea. Why would I ever upgrade these other things? What am I getting out of this? And
A question on that real quick. Did you still feel good getting that upgrade currency, or because the sinks for the money were useless to you, you didn't feel good at all?
no, I didn't feel good at all. I
Okay.
didn't feel good at all. And I also didn't really care to like when I would go explore to go find it or something like that. Yeah, I didn't have any compulsion to do it because I also in the power fantasy of it all, it's weird. Like I'm fucking Master Chief. Like I'm just gonna
Yeah,
blow
yeah.
through everything anyway. What's the point? But contrast that to like Doom Eternal, and you get upgrade currency. I upgraded all of my weapons as much as I could, and got all the mods because you have to. Like that's like additive power. You need to have those things. You need to have them upgraded. But they also have mastery levels within those things. So once you get your upgrade, if you use that upgrade and do something, some action with that some amount of times, it upgrades again. So now all of a sudden you're in this loop of, oh, I just bought this thing. What's the mastery so that I can get more power? Okay, cool. I have to use this and use it in this way. And if I do, I get something else cool. And that reinforcement, rather than saying buy everything, it's buy and then use, actually forced me into that forcing function. Now, Doom Eternal has way more breadth of weaponry and way more use cases for those things, right? Halo doesn't have that. It's just I feel like I shoot my gun and I find my favorites, right? I have the needler and I have a battle rifle. Awesome. It's not situational like it is in Doom Eternal.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because
Wow.
Doom Eternal is
Surprise-
like I use the sniper rifle mod on my rifle and I hit specific pieces of that enemy and that blows that piece off and then they go into a different state and then if I want to kill this other thing I need the plasma weapon so I have to switch to that. Oh, this is a shielded character. I need to use this mod on that character to break their shield and then I switch to something else to blow them up and it's the combat puzzle's big, and you're really rewarded well for using the doing the puzzle right. It's like you can either insta gib this thing and kill it instantly, or you could shoot it 100 times. Pick which one. You want to do the right puzzle, or you want to just try to mash through and fail.
That's interesting. I would have thought Halo, since you can kind of stick with two guns that you really like, would have a lot of progression in that weapon. So you could at least feel like, yeah, my battle rifle, which I love, is getting even stronger. But
Battle
that's
rifle
interesting.
never changes throughout the game.
Wow.
You have two weapons, right? But what they do is that everything has a lack of ammo. And because it's more of an open world game, you're swapping weapons constantly. You will find yourself just running out of ammunition, and they have little
Oh,
ammo
okay.
depots and places where you can just walk over, press E, get new ammo, and but it's like, it's just easier just to just to swap, and you can also use your grappling hook and like shoot the gun, and then it comes in your hand. And you're like, okay, cool.
Yeah, Borderlands is a bit like that. You switch mostly because your ammo's out.
Here's the thing, though, the the feeling of how I receive the currency between Doom and Infinite are drastic. Doom has built it into context of the world, I feel, in a much better way than Infinite. Infinite has you picking up little data things and you get some currency. You go out into the world and you hear like boom, 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 these like little beeps, and then you go over and you pick up the thing and it's like, wow, new map revealed, new currency, blah blah blah. And cool, great, but it's not. There's nothing nice. There was nothing really like compelling about it, right? It was just like picking up anything in a game. Doom Eternal, you see old Doom guys, like old whatever Spartans, whatever they are, right? And they are there and they look like Obi-Wan Kenobi ghosts from like Return of the Jedi, and they're holding a coin. And when you walk over to them and go to them, they hand you the coin and they bow and then they go away. And I every time I'm like, thank you, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, that's
Thank you, my
cool.
friend. Thank you for helping me defeat evil. Because I always had this context of like, they're coming back and using any sort of life force or any sort of whatever this power is in the world. They're to manifest themselves in the world to give me their strength to
Yeah, yeah,
defeat the bigger evil.
that's cool.
And in doing so, they are who I am in a different time, you know, within that time sphere. And you know, even though they all look the exact same, but it's like I am them now. So they know the struggle that I'm going through, and they know that this is a big thing, and I'm using every bit of strength that they have to give me this. And I was like, I really, like, every time I would just be like, thank you, brother, thank you,
I bet.
thank you.
Yeah.
So strange. It's the same NPC every time, Calvin. I have no idea why I feel that way, but for whatever reason, the way that they have put that into the world of like, oh, actually, what am I talking about? The Spartan stuff is supposed to be cool, I guess. They give you, it's Spartan upgrade cores, and you find them from finding dead Spartans.
Okay. Yeah.
So you find the dead Spartan, and then you learn a little bit about their story, and then they give you a little bit. You can go read like how they died, and that was kind of cool. I guess it was kind of cool. Like the ones that they put in front of you are kind of sweet, but like contrast the two, it's like that character's just fucking dead. Like
yeah.
they're not alive anymore, and they're just a mangled mess. So I have to emotionally impart myself of the same way of they're who I am at a different time, and they fell. Same way of the other things, like they are my time at in a different way, and they fell. They're ghosts or entities or something else. But it's the, I guess, the way that somehow that those two things on board, like
Totally.
I'm stealing from it. Like the other one felt like I was stealing callously
Yeah.
from a dead comrade, where it's like the dude's just on the ground, just fucking mangled, and I'm just like going through his fucking pockets and being like,
Yeah.
yo, what tech you got? Because I need that. Whereas the other one is like, these guys are actually giving me something. And they're, you know, they've set it up that their lives are, it's not their position anymore to do this. And that's what I got. And if the other Spartans had built me, you know, like these fallout shelters, these there's something that says like, this is where they dug out, or you know, I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe it has to be the fight. Maybe they have to die, and that's how it is. But I was not. I felt like I was rummaging around the pockets of dead comrades rather than, you know,
Right.
you're trying to get me to emotionally impart into the feeling of like, oh, dead person, dead Spartan, like whoa, and then I'm fucking.
That's an amazing example, really, because both these are actually the same sort of context narrative
Power
around it.
fantasy,
Yeah, that's
hero
amazing.
character, go point
But
A, point B, defeat everything
totally
in front of you.
different. Yeah, but totally different feeling based on how you execute on it.
Maybe it's just a fail, like a sense of like I just don't like Halo anymore. I don't know. You know, Halo Infinite has had a rough time, but yeah, definitely there's ways there, and that'll go back like to the pillars. How do you want the player to feel when they get this currency? How do you want them to feel whenever they go to this NPC and get this thing? What am I trying to impart? And let's say you're trying to impart some emotionality into the player. I want you to feel for the Spartan. I want you to empathize with its death, that they went out flying. I want you to empathize that you could die at any time. You're that you're not this big power. This could happen. But then that all broke down as soon as you got me rummaging around their pockets.
Yeah.
And that's such a competing thing. How can I have empathy for something that I'm now feel like I'm stealing from? You know, and so player motivation's huge. You know, like player wants power, but I want you to empathize with how you just got that power. So build that better. Build that loop better. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, but if you don't recognize that, like, hey, you had this pillar, does this thing hold up to this? I want the player to empathize with the Spartan that died. I want the player to feel like that they are not this invincible thing. I want them to feel like the big evil in the world actually is powerful enough to kill you, and you need to be careful here. Great. But then go through the action and see, do the players feel that way? Because if they don't, then you haven't hit on that. You haven't hit on that goal.
is like it checks the box for like the mechanic and maybe a couple layers above it, but it missed the mark
To me,
there.
yeah. So you mean, I think that in general, whatever progression system you're going to use in terms of onboarding new mechanics to the player or anything like this, it's think about the context within your game of how you want to distribute the content across your game. Do you want it to be is your game non-linear, and do you want it to be non-linear? Then great, cool, you have some core metrics that you can do there. Do it behind bosses, do it behind bigger challenges. Upgrade currency is not a bad thing, but there's other problems there too of like players could just forget about it, not upgrade their stuff. Make sure that you reinforce that, and you don't want to be reinforcing that through UI or difficulty jumps, which is like a whole other thing. Giving items is probably a cool thing too, but items are limited because once I have that item, there's usually no real path or upgrade on that item. So like Breath of the Wild, I get magnetism, but it's like great, now I have magnetism and I always have magnetism. What are the other things in my toolbox, and how do I go seek those out? But the knowledge thing is huge. Like teaching, like regardless of it all, teaching the knowledge of how to use these things effectively and maybe building in some complexity there can be a nice little touch of the mastery scale of, yeah, sure, like my gun might shoot once and it might just shoot, but then maybe I use my, maybe I have an alt fire and it does burst, and maybe it bursts with some other vigor. I don't know, you know what I mean? But maybe if I burst and then go back to a single shot and then burst again, I can get in between a reload, right? Or like cut a frame thing so I can bop, 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 instead of just like and then...
And if you have just pure knowledge progression, one of the faults of that is that you could YouTube and look up like all these strats. However, both Celeste and the Witness have a execution component to it. So even if you know all the Celeste tricks, you haven't put in the reps to even use it. So if you're going down that route, try to put both knowledge progression and execution progression there.
Nice. Well, Kyle, we're at hour 20 or hour 12. That was cool. I like that.
I'm good.
Progression's good. Progression's good. All right.